And so, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our program is about to start in a few minutes. We are requesting everyone to turn off your microphones throughout the event. If you have any queries, especially during our quorum, you may raise your questions and concerns in the comment section. Also, at the end of the program, the link of the evaluation form will be given to receive your certificates. Ayan. So, good day, Escolarians. I am Zarina Dichoson.
And I am Paula Andrea Milad. We are your Masters of Ceremonies for CEU Political Science Society's General Meeting with the theme, A Pivotal Change, Transition of the Philippine Independent Foreign Policy.
And so, hello partner, excited ka na ba for today's event?
Of course, partner, dahil balita ko, we'll be having a high-caliber speaker today.
Exactly, pero hindi lang yan because today is also a historical moment for the political science program dahil ito ang last event ng ating organization. Unang taon lang ito ng PSS at grabe, nasa huling event na naman tayo. Kaya naman, wag na natin tong patagalin pa. Allow us now to share to you all of the objectives of our program.
Acquisition of knowledge about the significant role of the country's stand in international relations, to know the key role of the incoming administration on the Philippines' independent foreign policy. Now, before we actually begin this afternoon's program, let us bring ourselves in the presence of the Lord as we listen to a doxology to be followed by the singing of the Philippine national anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, kaya sa sinananan, alam ng puso, sa likid mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bangaw, ay hinatang tulak, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isa kang patawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iibig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di mag-iibig. Lumalang araw ng walang pansin ka, buhay langit sa piling ko. Ang higaya ng pagkay ng amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Walang higit na pag-ibig, o mahal na puso, ang bayang Pilipino, alay sa puso mo. Sa templo, sa tahanan, sambit namin ang iyong ngalan. Maghahari kang tunay sa parit hanggang hulo. Malaon na naming pangarap, paghari mo sa silangan, pananampalataya, namising-mingas ng araw, singkatag ng kabundukan, Hari kang tunay sa paring hanggang hulo.
Yeah, now to officially commence our program, let us have our ever beautiful and hardworking Secretary of the CEU Political Science Society, Miss Nina Micaela Gutierrez.
A pleasant afternoon to all of you. To our guest speaker, Professor Enrico P. Gloria, to our program head and organization advisor, Mr. Julius De Leon, to our Central Escolar University faculty members, to our hosts and committee members, and of course to our dearest participants. First of all, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone who took their time to be here today on a weekend. For a whole school year, the CEU Political Science Society has successfully conducted events during its first year of establishment. Indeed, it was an experience that encouraged and nourished young minds and ignited one's nationalistic and patriotic deeds. This wouldn't have been possible without the guidance of our advisor, Mr. Julius De Leon, the organization's officers, most especially to our president, Mr. Brent Idan Fernandez, and the hard-working committee members who have been with us since day one. And today, we are at the last event of the year. At the same period of time, the 2022 election was held. The Filipino people decided their fate on the 9th of May and elected a new president to sit in the next following months. A new administration responsible for the country's political and economic decisions and all services necessary for the welfare of the public. This all exists within the national framework of the nation. However, outside of it is as important. The Philippines' international relations are of significance to the development of the country's various aspects as well. As the newly elected president takes their executive seat, what lies ahead of our global agenda, and how will a new administration take us forward? This event is about to unveil the current and future status of the Philippine independent foreign policy. Let us all explore and be one and one who knows. Again, thank you very much for being here this afternoon. We hope you will be able to gain new insights and knowledge beneficial to your future endeavors. This is Nina Micaela Gutierrez, Secretary of the CEU Political.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nina Micaela Gutierrez, for your opening remarks. That indeed is an emotional and exciting moment for our community. And we do hope to continue to spread the nationalistic fire in each individual.
Again, thank you so much, Ms. Nina Gutierrez. Also, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the CEU students from other colleges, CEU non-teaching staff, and some of the faculty members of CEU, Dr. Lorenzo Hipolito, Professor Joem Ko, Dr. Swan Yi Ki, a medical doctor working at the Singapore Hospital, also to our very own PSS advisor, Sir Julius De Leon. Welcome.
Escolarians, are you now ready for the guest speaker of today's event? Hindi na natin ito patatagalin pa, kaya naman let us have Mr. Angelo Gabriel Barba, our very own Public Relations Officer, to introduce our guest speaker.
Aside from perseverance and hard work, two distinct virtues emerge from the alchemy of the achieving person. These are a pioneering spirit and a willingness to try new things. Today's speaker is the living idiom of a man who happened to be born at the right time and place. With such an impressive background, it is not surprising that he became a dedicated educator in academia. He is a graduate of Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the UP School of Economics and earned his master's degree in politics, specializing in international relations at Tsinghua University in Beijing, China, where he was a recipient of the Outstanding Master Student Award together with a distinction on his master's thesis on Chinese economic sanctions and social identity theory in international relations. Currently, he is a research fellow for the Center of Integrative and Development Studies under the Strategic Studies Program and an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Professor Enrico V. Gloria.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Thank you for
afternoon
having
po.
me. Yes, thank you for the invitation from the executive committee of your organization. I'm very pleased to make a brief lecture on the assigned topic for me. So, without further ado, I'll begin. I'll just share my slides. Oh, can I share my slides? Can you give me co-host access? Anyone?
Technical team. Thank you.
So while the technical team is working on that, so I need a co-host access so I can share screen. So the topic that was given to me by your executive committee is to discuss basically transitions on Philippine independent foreign policy. So as we all know, no, during the the outgoing administration, naging buzzword talaga, if you will, yung independent foreign policy. So this is something that we need to unpack, and I'm not saying that I'm gonna do justice in unpacking that concept, no, but there's a lot of things that needs to be considered whenever we talk about what an independent foreign policy is, no, especially for a small power like the Philippines. So I'll begin with my lecture. So this is just 30 minutes, and I would also like to have more time, if you will, dun sa open forum, so you can ask questions and we can have a conversation on this. So this is the general outline. I just have 3 points, main points that I want to discuss with everyone. So first is probably an assessment of the foreign policy of the outgoing administration. No? And from that assessment, maybe we can identify some lessons learned, no? Or basically what we can do better, no? Now that we have a new incoming administration. And the second point that I would like to discuss is the external and domestic environment of the Philippines, no? Because at the end of the day, Philippine foreign policy doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We have to consider what has changed, no, since 2016 within the region and within the larger global setting. No? Likewise, no, the election of incoming President Bongbong Marcos also signifies huge changes, if you will, in our political landscape. So we need to consider those before we can make an assessment of what the incoming administration should focus on. No? And lastly, no, we will be discussing priorities and ways forward for the incoming Bongbong Marcos presidency, right? So it's sort of an extension of the first bullet point, no? And really just a disclaimer, no, my expertise is on Chinese foreign policy and a little bit on Philippine China relations, no. So although I teach a class on Philippine foreign policy, no, I have yet to publish a paper on a peer-reviewed paper rather, no, on Philippine foreign policy. So I hope, no, at the very least I'm able to entice your interest on Philippine foreign policy and international relations in general. So moving on, for the assessment on Duterte's foreign policy, I would want to adopt the framework of continuities and changes. No? And I think when we consider Philippine foreign policy under the Duterte administration, there are some factors, no, that is simply a continuing, I guess, trend, if you will, no, from previous administrations. No? But at the same time, obviously, what was really highlighted during the past 6 years was the changes that the Duterte administration adopted for Philippine foreign policy, right? So let's start first with the changes. Obviously, we saw a more amicable partnership with China. No? Comparing that to the previous Aquino administration, no, the Philippine-China relations was really frozen. right? So literally no communication with the Philippine Embassy in China and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China in 2012, right? If you would still remember, I don't know how old are you when the Scarborough Shoal standoff happened in 2012. That was a game changer in Philippine-China relations, right? 2012 was like a pivotal moment in Philippine-China relations. No? So, and then of course, no, during the previous Aquino administration, we brought China to court, no, which basically changed the dynamics of not just the dispute but our relationship with China. No, so if you're gonna base it from the Aquino standpoint, no, uh, talagang the sentiment back then when we still didn't have Duterte as the president, no, was that it's going downhill, yung Philippine-China relations, no. But Duterte came into power and sort of adopted a full 180-degree turn with respect to our foreign policy, right? So much so that it becomes already questionable with respect to our national interests, if you will, right? So it has to be emphasized that after the 2016 arbitration victory, no, if you're going to study Philippine foreign policy, we have entered a new era, no, in Philippine foreign policy, and that is yung this is what I call a post-arbitration victory era. No, this is significant because it really shows that we are capable of of basically being toe to toe with a major power using weapons of the weak, the rule of the law, no, to challenge China's claims in our territories, right? So we've entered that new stage where basically there's an increasing legalization, if you will, of our relations with China, right? But then again, what needs to be emphasized here is that shortly after the inauguration of Duterte, no, he flew to China for an official state visit with Xi Jinping, and this is the photo that you see here. And then he basically positioned China as the flagship or the main agenda of Philippine foreign policy under his leadership. No? That in itself is a significant change from the previous Aquino administration, who has obviously adopted a more antagonistic position, right? And at the same time, no, this amicable partnership with China, the flip side of that is Duterte's very antagonistic position towards the United States, right? If you're going to simply consider yung rhetoric, yung narrative and discourses that Duterte has adopted towards the United States, no, you would sense like some sort of bitterness, if you will, no, towards our experience of colonialism under United States, no, during contemporary history, and he capitalized on that injustice, if you will, to justify his antagonism towards the United States, right? But at the same time, what's important to emphasize here is that despite that antagonistic rhetoric that the chief executive adopted, no, it seems like U.S.-Philippine alliance remained intact, no, despite the phenomena that is Rodrigo Duterte in Philippine foreign policy. You can see that the U.S.-Philippine alliance remained resilient, no, and this is the wonder, if you will, or the something that's amazing when it comes to Philippine foreign policy. It's largely still defined by our partnership with the United States, right? So I want you guys to remember that. No? When you think of Philippine foreign policy, it still pays to look at where U.S. foreign policy is headed, right? So despite independence that we've gained, no, in 1946, there's that continuity in terms of how we conduct our Philippine foreign policy. And interestingly, it's still being, being aligned indirectly or directly with U.S. national interests, right? And as you can see, no, even if we have someone who's obviously a rogue diplomat like Duterte, no, U.S.-Philippine alliance remained intact. No? So the U.S.-Philippine alliance is so resilient that it, changes in Philippine leadership render insignificant. amidst, U.S.-Philippine alliance, right? So these are some of the continuities and changes that I'd like to emphasize, no? And it gives you a sense, no, of the shape and form of Philippine foreign policy. Now, I would like to dig deeper on this post-arbitration victory era. No? This is important because it signifies that we can harness institutions and international norms to our advantage. No? And this is rightfully the Benigno Aquino III legacy. No? That the rule of law can be used by small powers as their main recourse when it comes to putting up a fight, if you will, with major powers who are obviously uh, flexing their power based on basically their military assets and their overall comprehensive power. No? In a zero sum international environment, no, in a balance of power anarchic international environment, it is good that we have rule of law, no, kasi yun lang yung pwede nating sandalan, if you will, to really engage with major powers, no. But at the same time, the bad side of this, if you will, is that we effectively legalize the dispute. No? Why? What's wrong with simply legalizing the dispute? Well, it basically narrowed down the opportunities for engagement. No? When we brought China to court, we basically are telling everyone, no, the international audience, everyone we engage in, that whenever we talk about West Philippine Sea or South China Sea, it's really going to be about rule of law, right? And we know that when we negotiate, no, with competing interests, hindi lang naman rules and regulations and laws yung nagmamatter. No? There's basically EQ, if you will, no? Or basically charming your way into getting what you want, into preserving your national interests. No? Those other informal mechanisms become subdued when we brought China to court. No? So that's one way of appreciating the cons of the arbitration victory. No? But still, no, despite those cons that I've just elaborated, no, I still think that the post-arbitration victory or the arbitration itself was the missed opportunity for the Duterte administration. No? The Duterte administration could have used that victory to create or to foster a rules-based order in the region and even domestically. The arbitration victory was not really normalized, if you will. It was not embedded in the psyche of our nationalism that when we say arbitration victory, it's really a red line for Filipino national interests, right? Instead, what we saw, the dominant discourse during the Duterte administration is that it's simply a piece of paper, again, Duterte's words, not mine, a piece of paper that we can set aside for the moment so that we can engage China towards something more fruitful, right? That particular framing immediately places the arbitration victory in an either or type of dynamics, in a zero sum dynamics. No, it's either we engage China uh, amicably or we uphold the arbitration victory. Where in fact, no, we could have explored ways where we can actually get the best of both worlds. No, uh, of course, no. Granted that it needs to be greater rethinking needs to be done with respect to that objective. No, it's still worth the try. No, I think the arbitration victory could have mobilized more international support to our cause. No? And as we can see what's happening with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, it's important now more than ever that we emphasize institutions and norms, right? It's really the weapons of the weak. No? It's really the best recourse of small powers amidst great power competition and great power aggression, right? So now, lessons learned in terms of that brief assessment, we need to go beyond this thinking of an independent foreign policy. Uh, I say this because I think independent foreign policy as a concept has been bastardized during the existing administration. No? Uh, it was used to justify Duterte's antagonisms, if you will, to our treaty ally, right? It was used to justify, say, uh, an overly, I guess, fanatic approach towards China. No? So I think we need to craft a more concrete foreign policy agenda that goes beyond the rhetoric of independent foreign policy. No? So if you would notice, our foreign policy has been merely reactive and has been merely consequential to depending on who's going to be the next president. Every 6 years, there seems to be change, no? Where in fact, we need to define what are national interests that, are purely non-negotiable. You know, what are our values and what do we stand for as a nation? And then sort of craft a concrete foreign policy agenda from that. No? And thankfully, no, there's a conversation already spewing in the policy circles, foreign policy circles, that this needs to be emphasized now more than ever because we have an incoming administration. No? So we also need to assess the current alliance with the United States. No? So obviously, we saw the current US-Philippine alliance as being mired by many troubles, if you will, within the current administration. No? There has been the threat to officially or cancel completely the VFA, no? To basically trash the entire mutual defense treaty, no? Which is the foundation of US-Philippine relationship and alliance. No? So for me, that is a symptom that we need to rethink our alliance with the United States. Not so much scrap it, but probably it needs to be elevated, if you will, towards a partnership instead of an alliance. Where in a partnership, expectations are more flexible, right? The problem with the current setup is that when you say US Philippine alliance, no, we have been perennially expecting the United States to basically support us in our conflict with China when it comes to the West Philippine Sea. That an attack on Chinese vessels or on Filipino vessels, Filipino fishermen by Chinese militia, maritime militia, is constituent to an act of war, if you will. No? But of course, we all know that that wouldn't happen because it needs to go to the US Congress, whether they will be supporting the Philippines case in a situation or a scenario where there's an escalated military conflict, right? So in the Philippine policy circle, that has consistently been raised as the point of disagreement, no? That the alliance is not really serving its purpose. No? And as we have seen during the past 2 years, no, threats to national security have also changed towards threats to human security, so like pandemic, for instance. No? And when the alliance was created, no, 70 years ago, it was within the context of Cold War. It was within the context of US versus USSR rivalry. No? Now that the context has changed, where we have rising China, other major powers, practically a multipolar world order, where the United States is not the sole superpower anymore, no? It needs to be asked whether the alliance needs to be revisited, really. No? And in conjunction with that, we also have to rethink our relationship with major powers, more specifically with China and Japan, right? So what type of relationship should we have with China, considering that we have this perennial conflict with respect to our national territories, right? It cannot be that we would be, overly fanatic towards someone who's obviously after our territories, right? That's just a policy uh, conundrum, if you will, that needs to be challenged, right? And at the same time, I think there's a lot of potential in terms of really leveraging ASEAN as a regional power in itself, right? And the Philippines, one of the major players within ASEAN. No? And I think we could engage China more effectively within that regional framework, right? But obviously, there's this question of different priorities within ASEAN, yes, no? But, if you would consider where we are decades ago, no, ASEAN was nothing, no? But now ASEAN has evolved into something more comprehensive. We have strategic dialogues with our ASEAN partners, no? So definitely it's growing, it's progressing towards something more formidable, right? And when it comes to our other partners within the region, so you have Japan, uh, Australia, no, and even India, no. These are major powers that we can also actively engage with, no. Perhaps people-to-people exchange and economic relations could be a good start, where we can basically hedge our bets. No, now it's not always U.S. and China at the end of the day when it comes to our external environment. We also have to watch out for China's creeping assertiveness. No? If you've noticed during the past 6 years, there has been many instances where you have quote unquote Chinese fishermen harassing our fishermen. No? But really, these are maritime militia. No? Basically, it has the blessing of the party in China to act aggressively towards Filipino fishermen in South China Sea. So it gives them plausible deniability, no, that it's not officially mandated because they are fishermen, no, and they are basically private people, no. Yet at the same time, it achieves the objective of slowly uh, establishing de facto presence within our territories, right? So it's a slow and a gradual uh, assertive take, if you will, on our territories within the region, right? We need to be mindful of these new tactics that China, well, it's not really new, but more pronounced, if you will, tactics that China has employed, no, to to slowly gain ground, no, on these contested territories, right? And I think one way to really watch out for that creeping assertiveness is uh, to re-emphasize our victory during the uh, arbitration award, no, in 2016. We need to start parading that we indeed won that award, and that it's time, no, that some areas need to be defined by that particular ruling, right? So, or at the very least, we shouldn't take it for granted anymore, wherein we adopt that narrative of either or. It's either the arbitration victory or, a comprehensive engagement with China, right? So at least, no, at the top of my head, these are things that we probably could learn from how foreign policy was conducted in the past 6 years, right? Now, moving on to the second part, no. So it's domestic context, no. We need to also study that and appreciate, no, that this incoming president enjoyed an overwhelming mandate, almost 60% majority, no, probably a first, no, in any president, at least within the Third Republic, no. So that means he enjoys that overwhelming mandate that he can capitalize to justify whatever policy decision he wants to take, right? And also, it has to be understood, no, that this popularity happened within an intensifying climate of disinformation, right? So there's no denying that. No. There have been numerous studies already presented in mainstream media and also in scholarly articles that proves to everyone that indeed there is an intensifying climate of disinformation and that the incoming president actually benefited from that. No? It's not an opinion, it's simply a fact. No? So given that context and setup, no, we must appreciate, no, the dynamics, the political dynamics that we are in as a democracy. No? More specifically, I think we are heading towards evolving into something illiberal or into something authoritarian, or what we call democratic backsliding. No? The very foundations of what makes a democracy is under attack, right? So when you have a president who won overwhelmingly without engaging in reason, in critical thinking through debates, no, that is quite problematic. No? That you can actually win a Philippine election without really laying out concrete plans and opening it up for discussion or debate, right? It showed na it's really not critical thinking anymore that decides who's going to be the next leader. No? It's ultimately, again, continuity pa rin. It's ultimately traditional politics and basically how strong your backing is or your family is in domestic politics, right? Um, and then you have this increasingly attack on the media that we've seen intensified during the past administration. I don't know whether it will that will continue in the next incoming administration, no. But if recent events could be markers, no, there has already been concerning developments, no, with respect to protecting the freedom of the press, right? So if there's one thing beyond West Philippine Sea, beyond territorial conflict that really matters most as our national security concern, it's really disinformation, right? And I think the previous elections really showed that disinformation has uh, taken root, no, in the fabric of Philippine society. No? So what needs that will really affect, no, the trajectory of our foreign policy, I think. Kasi you're now seeing a policy direction where checks and balances are undermined, no? Regular ways where we can make our leaders accountable when it comes to foreign policy issues, no? Becomes more complex, no? Kasi there are simply a lot of noise with disinformation that we have to muddle through, right?
75.
Excuse me, sorry. All right, thank you. So, how about outside the black box? No? How do we consider other external, or basically what's happening within the region or in the international setting? No? Um, 2019, we entered again a new era. And I think this showed na pandemics and other transnational issues like climate change needs to be addressed collectively. No, it's basically challenged our assumptions about international relations. No, what I mean by that is that international relations is not anymore simply an arena of the state, of the sovereign state. No, uh, phenomena like COVID-19, climate change, no, pushes us to actually double down on international cooperation. No? That we need to go beyond our borders and we really need to engage other countries to combat common challenges, right? And I think that was re-emphasized during the past 2 years at the very least. No? So that major powers, for instance, are also helpless, no, by themselves if they do not engage other countries or other actors, non-state actors, no, beyond their borders. No. And we also saw the United States, no, shifting its focus towards Indo-Pacific. No, at least that's a continuity between the Trump and the current Biden administration. But it's also a source of frustration because really, just like the Philippines, whenever there's a change in the administration from Republican to Democratic, no, there seems to be a change as well in the foreign policy priorities of the United States, and that is crucial because, as I have mentioned a while ago, much of our foreign policy is still heavily reliant on US national interests, right? So, and at the same time, it emboldens China, no? China, who has relatively like a 10-year limit for their presidents, no, Xi Jinping, who's also expected to still, control the helms after he retires in next year. No? Uh, that particular authoritarian power has relative continuity in terms of how it establishes its foreign policy agenda, right? So it seems like democracies like the United States and the Philippines are at a loss when it comes to setting expectations straight, no, in terms of where their foreign policy priorities are heading, right? And then Ukraine-Russia war also shows more than ever that we need the rule of law really to defend the interests of basically countries that are being bullied like Ukraine, right? Um, Briefly, Russia is engaging in this act of aggression towards Ukraine precisely because Putin has a unique interpretation of what Russian history is. And that version of Russian history includes Ukraine within its within its borders, right? And if you would, observe Ukraine, really, it's a unique and distinct culture by itself to that of Russia, right? So it's really, you know, it's really unacceptable that this is happening in the 21st century, right? And I think the Philippines has a vested interest in this in terms of upholding the sanctity, again, of the rule of law, you know, and certain international norms, like respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity. Uh, Now for my last section, which is the yung priorities and ways forward for the Philippines, I think we need to look inward and really think deep about our position in the current global order. No? Again, as I have emphasized, we need to have a conversation in terms of setting our non-negotiable national interests. No? And in connection with this, we need to have a serious conversation as well that includes everyone, not just our politicians, in terms of what do we want out of this world, no? And really what are our national interests, no? And what are our values as a nation that we need to reflect in those national interests, right? It's I know it's kind of irrelevant, if you will, if we talk about policies, no, but this is something that we have taken for granted, really. That's why our foreign policy has been merely reactive, no, when it comes to engaging other powers. And also, we have to consider that we are in a multipolar world order where strengthening global governance is key. No? So again, global governance, the past 2 years has showed that global governance really needs to be emphasized. And it begs to ask whether the Philippines should play a significant role in reinvigorating global governance. No? Should we become more proactive, in terms of our membership in other multilateral organizations, say the ASEAN, the United Nations, etc. Right? So, and this is my last slide, specifically for this administration. The reason why I only allotted 2 slides for the ways forward, or what we could expect for the incoming president, it's because I think we are still in a wait and see type of position. To be fair, the incoming president hasn't been sworn to oath yet. So Digong still has a couple of weeks left. So, and we have yet to see who are the cabinet appointees for key institutions like the DFA, the National Security Council or agency rather, and also the Department of National Defense, right? So these are key institutions when it comes to our foreign policy. And I think in terms of appointing cabinet members, we need to choose those who have proven track record, in terms of really being engaged in crafting Filipino foreign policy. There needs to be an excellent team, and I agree with the some ideas and opinions that has been spurting the past couple of days that the incoming president should consider appointing uh, uh, experts or who are not really pro BBM, and I think that signifies unity. And I think, for instance, appointing Professor Balisacan, who was Aquino's previous NEDA chief, is a good choice as far as this incoming administration is concerned. And I hope we can also see that trend continue in terms of yung foreign policy institutions. We also need to, again, as like what I've emphasized, normalize the arbitration victory. I think it's high time that we celebrate July 16, as a victory day for the Philippines. So We need to really instill in our kind of nationalism that that was a momentous day in our history. No, that we it's a David and Goliath type of event. No, that we need to continue teaching to our students. No, that in this anarchic international order, uh, small powers do stand a chance. No, if they use the rule of law, right? And I think as small powers, we simply need to continue pursuing a hedging strategy as opposed to outright bandwagoning, no, or picking a patron, say the United States or China. It needs to be hedging, just like what Singapore, Thailand have been perpetually doing as far as their uh, countries are concerned. No, we do not have to align ourselves in a particular major power. No, we need to, for a lack of a better term, no, play them and basically try to pull our strings, no, in terms of letting them fight with one another for our approval. No, I think that is the very essence of a small power's existence. No? That we continuously hedge against these big powers in the region for our own survival. And lastly, we need to have continuity in terms of Philippine foreign policy matters. No? And that means, no, really pinning down a concrete foreign policy agenda. No? Just like what I've said, no, yung mga non-negotiable natin when it comes to our national interests, right? So I'll end here, and I think I went beyond my assigned time limit. But thank you again for giving me this opportunity to share these insights. Thank you.
And so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Enrico P. Gloria, for the informative discussion regarding Philippines' independent foreign policy. With your words, our perspective about the country's international agenda has widened indeed. Thank you so much. So magko-comment lang din ako for my take-in lang din sa presentation ni Sir is, yes, we have actually seen that the tie between China and Philippines is really elevated during Duterte administration. Yet at the end of the day, we had a lot of allies, not just US and China, and also agree with you, Sir, na Duterte administration has closed in the gap of between China, but again, knowing what is happening from our Filipino fishermen and some kind of assertiveness, knowing the fact that we won the sovereignty and the arbitration victory. Gaya ng sabi ni Sir, mas lalo dapat nating i-elevate na nanalo tayo. And knowing the fact that new administration will be new to us. So we must protect also our democracy. So partner?
Thank you, Prof. Enrico. Totoong napakahalaga na makita natin ang kahalagahan ng mga natutunan natin sa mga nakaraan na administrasyon upang mas mapaganda natin ang ating bansa. Napakadami kong natutunan and I hope lahat ng audience here sa Zoom and sa Facebook Live natin ay madami ding nakuhang impormasyon patungkol sa ating topic.
Now, with this, we are able to see good bird's eye view when it comes to the policy. Ayan, partner, nakakatuwa naman. So, before we move on to the open forum, so we have 96 participants here in the Zoom, so welcome. And thank you for being with us here in the Zoom. So, partner?
Totoo, partner, kaya naman at this moment, we are now proceeding to our open forum. For those who have questions, please send your queries in the chat box. We will be reading your questions. And Prof, ang unang question po ay, in your opinion, how the Marcos administration exercised its IFP in a mixed economy format amidst the pandemic and regional turmoil?
Well, that's the difficult thing about the incoming administration. When I was doing my research in terms of his foreign policy priorities, I really cannot pin down concrete plans as far as his foreign policy agenda is concerned. Like if you go to his campaign website, no, talagang hindi mo mahanap dun yung specific plans of action, if you will, which is very basic. Even if tayo, diba, we run for office in student council in our orgs, no, unang requirement is we have to have plans of action, uh, basically platforms, no. And dun sa website niya, I was really surprised na wala talaga. No? I would imagine na dapat sa website meron. Eh. Maintindihan ko pa sa social media, hindi mo masyado mahanap. No? So that's the frustration there. No? Just want to premise where I'm coming from. No? But in the different interviews, no, yung mga unti-unting debates na inattendan niya, he was very vocal in saying that he will continue to engage with the United States. No? So he will respect the alliance. No? And that is surprising because he also said that he will continue what Duterte has started in terms of building amicable relations or maintaining amicable relations with China. I say that is surprising because when Duterte was running in 2015, 2016, out and out na siya na talagang antagonistic towards the United States. No? He ran uh, he ran during the campaign period saying that he will actually sever ties with the United States and he would scrap the alliance. Campaign period pa lang yun, hindi pa siya nanalong president. And for Marcos, he didn't really adopt that same antagonistic attitude towards the United States, which for me is quite promising kasi there's a window of opportunity for the incoming administration in terms of uh, really adopting a more level-headed foreign policy, no, with respect to US and China, no. So that could be synonymous to really having an independent foreign policy, if you
For
will.
Marcos, he didn't really adopt that same
Nag-repeat.
optimistic attitude towards the United
And
States.
may nag-add. Ayan. So, next question po from Peña Flor. Who has the capability in enforcing the arbitral ruling?
Mhm. So yung enforcement kasi ng any international laws, it has to come first with the states. Kasi 'di ba sa international system nga, it's really anarchic, meaning every one of us is sovereign. Every state is sovereign. Every state is their own boss, if you will. No? Yes, we have the United Nations, no, but really it's an amalgamation of sovereign states more than anything else. So when it comes to enforcement, it has to start with states and how they conduct their foreign policy, and then everything else will follow. So in terms of enforcement, no, the Philippines could have done more in terms of really enforcing the arbitration victory, right? But again, I also understand the dilemma that when we enforce the arbitration ruling, it also minimizes space for a further engagement with China beyond formal mechanisms. No, I guess at the end of the day, it's a choice that has to be made. No? Whether we want to engage China purely on a very legalist standpoint, or we want to keep our options open, or maybe there's a middle ground, right? Which I think hasn't really been fully explored. No? You have to understand that the arbitration victory is just 6 years old. No? And I think there needs more conversation in terms of how we can really utilize its full potential. No?
So another question po is, did the Marcos administration affect the Republic's relation to the West because of the atrocities of their family in the 70s? And what are the implications of this?
I have yet to really dig deep on the connection between atrocities committed by the Marcos family during the martial law and yung trajectory ni Marcos when it comes to his foreign policy. But I think there are some, I guess, manifestations na the incoming Marcos president is really trying to forge a sort of a different path when it comes to say foreign policy. No? I have yet to see any indication that it's connected one way or another with his father's legacy.
So another question, sir, here in the chat box. How do you think winning from Dr. Swan Yiki? How do you think winning condition of son of the dictatorship in Philippines and how to reform full democracy in your country?
Well, for me, it's really, I think it's a manifestation of how we do politics in the Philippines. That nothing has changed really. That it's still about families. No? It's still about these political families banding together to form a loose coalition and back someone, no, based on their vested interests. No, because when during the campaign period, no, we saw this narrative that it's a people's initiative, people's campaign. Volunteerism is on the rise, and it's going to usher in a new era in terms of how we do domestic politics. But sadly, Marcos's win only shows that it's still traditional politics at the end of the day. It's still name recall, right? Now, voters would likely choose the president who they're familiar with, or who they think no they can establish effective patron-client relationships with, right? So it was very bold of the first runner-up to run on a campaign that is really advocating for reform on all levels, and quite frankly, that's not enough to win you an election in the Philippines. You need to, for a lack of a better term, no, still play the game, and it's still about families, dynasties, no? Forming your loose coalition of Duterte, Arroyo, Marcos, Estrada type of cartel dynasty, right? So that's still what it takes, no, to win elections in the Philippines.
Yes po. Last question na po tayo. Do you think Marcos will compromise its sovereignty over disputed water in exchange to the communist economic help?
Hmm. Again, no, it's hard to read the tea leaves at this moment because we still don't know who his foreign policy team is, no, and he wasn't really quite clear on his foreign policy agenda during the campaign season, no, which is also a window of opportunity for us, for civil society. Probably we can still influence where our foreign policy is heading, no, but if his relative ties with the Duterte administration is any indication, probably we will see continuity in that manner where, the arbitration victory is going to be placed on the side in exchange for more tangible benefits with China, which has yet to fully materialize, by the way. So, yeah, if that's any indication, no, then probably we're simply heading the same path. But I hope I'm wrong on that. So, yeah.
So sir, I'm sorry for we have another last na to talaga sir na question. So from Peña Flor again. So can we say that the arbitration really occurred since only one party was involved where China did not participate in the proceedings?
Uh yes, I think it's still valid. No? At the end of the day, we've invited China, and there's really no strong basis on why China shouldn't be included because uh, China is a signatory of the UNCLOS. No? And I think it's not secret why China didn't want to join the arbitration ruling. No? So, yeah, I think it's still valid as an order of a court of law. No? So, yun nga. But again, that's the question then. Would you engage with China purely on the basis of arbitration victory? And personally, I'm also not keen on supporting that very extreme position. No? But at the very least, no, we should still embrace the victory that we've won and form it as one of the foundations of our foreign policy.
And so thank you so much, sir. Ayan. As much as we want to answer your questions, kasi napakarami pa po talagang question, we have to conclude our open forum due to time constraints. But don't worry, if you still have unanswered questions left, we will be collecting your inquiries na lang and forward them to our speaker. We will notify you of their answers through our Facebook page.
So be sure to like and follow the CEU Political Science Society for further updates. Just scan the provided QR code para i-direct sa ating Facebook page. At this moment, we would like to extend our utmost gratitude to our guest speaker for today's afternoon discussion. May we request our CEU Political Science Society Advisor, Prof. Julius O. De Leon, to present the Certificate of Appreciation.
Okay. The Central Escolar University School of Education, Liberal Arts, Music and Social Work, Political Science Society present this Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Enrico V. Gloria as the resource speaker in the Political Science General Meeting with the theme Pivotal Change, the Transition of the Philippine Independent Foreign Policy. Signed and given this day of June, 4th day of June 2022 via Zoom and FB Live. Signed by Mr. Renz Idan Fernandez, President of the Political Science Society, yours truly, and then Dr. Maria Rita Dacanay Lucas, the Dean of the School of Education, Liberal Arts, Music, and Social Work. Congratulations, sir, and thank you very much.
Thank you rin po, sir. Thank you.
May we request everyone to turn on their cameras for a photo op with Professor Enrico V. Gloria.
And also, we are calling the documentation committee to screenshot. Just give us a signal if we can smile. Thank you.
Ready po, first slide. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Next page po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Next po. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. And last page po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you po. Thank you.
And so once again, thank you so much, Professor Enrico V. Gloria, for attending a very memorable event, as this would be the last for this school year. Also want to acknowledge the Dent 1B and Dent 1F, also Professor Crisanta Fontanilla. Ngayon, tumungo naman tayo sa mga video messages ng ating iba pang mga guest speakers na talagang marami pang maibahaging impormasyon sa atin tungkol sa kalagayan ng ating independent foreign policy sa panibagong administrasyon. Please welcome, he is one of the member of the Majority Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, Honorable Win Gatchalian.
Political Science Society Secretary Nina Micaela Gutierrez, Political Science Program Head Mr. Julius De Leon, at sa lahat ng mga kalahok ng programang ito. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Mahalagang usapin ang pakikipag-ugnayan natin sa iba't ibang bansa pagdating sa ating pambansang seguridad, sa ating ekonomiya at sa kapakanan ng ating mga kababayan sa ibang bansa. Sa paghalal natin ng bagong Pangulo nitong nagdaang halalan, pumili rin tayo ng Chief Architect ng ating foreign policy. Bagamat nasa Pangulo ang kapangyarihan at tungkulin upang magsilbing kinatawan ng ating bansa sa mga pangdaigdigang usapin na kasaad sa ating saligang batas na ang interest pa rin ng sambayan ng Pilipino ang kailangan manaig. Sa panig naman naming mga senador, na sa amin ang tungkulin na suriin at sumang-ayon sa mga kasunduang papasukan ng ating bansa. Ito ay bahagi ng prinsipyo ng check and balance sa ating pamahalaan. Nitong nagdaang 6 na taon, ipinatupad ng Duterte administration ang independent foreign policy. Bagamat pinaigting ng administrasyon ang ating ugnayan sa China at Russia upang magbukas ng mas maraming oportunidad para sa ating mga kababayan. Patuloy din nating itinaguyod ang ating kasalinlan. Napanatili rin natin ang ugnayan sa mga bansang tulad ng Estados Unidos na tumulong sa atin nitong panahon ng pandemya. Nakita natin ito sa kanilang tulong upang magkaroon tayo ng sapat na bakuna kontra COVID-19. Kasabay ng pagkakaroon natin ng bagong pamunuan ay ang posibilidad na maaring magbago rin ang direksyon ng ating foreign policy. Gayunpaman, nanatili pa rin ang responsibilidad ng pamahalaan na pangalagaan ang kasarinlan at seguridad ng ating bansa at itaguyod ang kapakanan ng bawat Pilipino. Sa pagkamit ng mga tungkuling ito, ang inyong lingkod ay nanatiling katuwang ng ating mga bagong halal na pinuno. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you so much, Honorable Win Gatchalian. And to further inform us on this topic, together, let us listen once again. He is a member of the Majority Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Please welcome Honorable Bongo.
A good day to everyone. For much of our country's history, we have been under the control of foreign powers. During these periods of occupation, we were regarded as second-class citizens in our own country, depriving us of our liberty and right to self-determination. Our forefathers had no choice but to fight back and defy the powers in order for future generations of Filipinos to have the freedom they lacked at that time. But despite declaring independence in 1898, our country remained exposed to international meddling. Most of our foreign policy has been swayed and influenced to favor the interests of our erstwhile colonizers over the interests of our own people. We got the freedom, but it was unclear whether we had self-determination. President Rodrigo Duterte was well aware of this. As a result, the president's principal battle cry in regards to our relations with other countries during his term was our clamor for an independent foreign policy. An independent foreign policy is one that puts our national interest first over the interests of other countries. To have an independent foreign policy means the rejection of all foreign meddling and intervention in our affairs, upholding the idea of sovereign equality, and adherence to peaceful dispute resolution. Because of our independent foreign policy under President Duterte, we were able to diversify our relations with other countries. We have strengthened our ties with traditional allies, while also forging better relations with countries which we had previously had rough ties. This has been really beneficial to our country. In this age of globalization, diversifying our foreign ties and fostering friendly relations with our neighbors, even those who are seen as non-traditional partners, will reap numerous benefits for our country. Having a large number of friends on the international stage will allow us to broaden our search for shared interests. This is the Duterte legacy that the president wants to leave for our young and future leaders. Our commitment to having friendly relations with as many nations as possible, as well as the protection of our national interests. Such approach also reflects our own local culture of bayanihan, hospitality, and pakikisama. We have come a long way as a free and democratic country. Despite the progress made, there are still obstacles to overcome. It is my hope that President Duterte's legacy on our foreign policy will be continued by the incoming government, as it serves as a reminder for our youth to always choose the Philippines, to always prioritize the interests of our country and our fellow Filipinos over the interests of others. May it also remind us that nation building is a never-ending task. We all have a role to play in the continuing struggle for freedom and self-determination. Again, I would like to thank the Centro Escolar University's Political Science Society for inviting me to this event. Wishing you a fruitful and meaningful discussion. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you again, Honorable Bongo.
And so thank you so much, Honorable Bongo and Honorable Senator Gatchalian. Yes, I agree with Honor Gatchalian. We need to make sure that we give importance when it comes to international foreign policy, lalo na sa pakikipag-ugnayan natin sa ibang bansa. Nakita nga natin sa nakaraang administrasyon, napakalaki ang ugnayan natin sa ibang bansa, lalo na sa malawakang pangyayari ng pandemya. And I also agree with the peace dispute with other countries with this kind of topic. Nalaman natin ang friendly ties with other countries for the peace and sovereignty of our country. At dahil doon, we protect our nationalism.
Bilang isang pol-sci student, napakahalaga na mapakinggan natin ang kanilang mga salita para maging motivation na mag-aral at magsilbi pa sa bayan.
Grabe, partner, ang ganda ng mensahe ng sa atin ni Honorable Bongo at Honorable Gatchalian. Tunay ngang nabigay lalim pa ito ng konsepto ng ating malayang pakikipagkalakalan sa international na diskusyon.
Again, thank you so much sa nakaka-inspire na mensahe from Honorable Bongo, and thank you, Honorable Gatchalian, for taking the time out of their way to record these short messages for us. Marami ba kayong natutunan, fellow Escolarians? If yes, give us heart reactions naman.
Sure ako na siksik-liglig at nag-uumapaw ang ating natutunan today about our independent foreign policy. So ayan, pwede kayong mag-comment mga reactions, anything na natutunan nyo or take in nyo sa ating napag-usapan today. Kaya naman, if you like to share what we have talked about today, visit and like the Facebook page of CEU Political Science Society and share the recorded video of today's event sa inyong mga social media.
Tama, but before we proceed to the next part of the program, we are giving you a 3-minute break para naman mas ma-absorb pa natin ang mga natutunan natin for the day. We'll be right back after 3 minutes. Welcome back, Escolarians. At this juncture, we are now on the second part of the program. But before that, let's first listen to the performance of a fellow political science student, Miss Micah Francine Vidalio, as she serenades us with the song Alapaap by Eraserheads.
1, 2, 3, go. Hanggang sa dulo ng mundo, hanggang maubos ang upo, hanggang gumulong ang luha, hanggang mahulog ang tala. Masdan mo ang aking mata, di mo ba nakikita? Ako ngayon'y lumilipad at nasa langit na. Gusto mo bang sumama? Di mo na kailangan pang magtakot mahiya. Hindi mo na kailangan pang humanap ng iba. Kalimutan lang muna ang lahat ng problema. Huminga ka ng malalim at tayo'y lalarga na. Handa ka na bang kumala? Ang daming bawal sa mundo. Sinasakal nila tayo. Buksan ang puso at isipan. Paliparin ang kamalayan. Masdan mo ang aking mata, di mo ba nakikita? Ako ngayon'y lumilipad at nasa langit na. Handa ka na bang kumala?
Wow, thank you very much, Miss Micah Francine Vidalio. Grabe, your voice truly captivated us all. Heart reacts naman dyan, everyone. Saktong-sakto sa theme ng ating event. Lalarga na sa panibagong kabanata ang Pilipinas.
Ayan, tama ka dyan, partner. Basta Polsay, talagang mahusay. Marahil marami sa inyo ang hindi pa nakakaalam, pero just like we said, sa aming pinakaunang event, the CEU Political Science Society is a dream come true, not just to us, but also to the past generation of CEU Political Science Society students. For many years, this is the only year that the organization is formed. Partner?
Totoo, partner. Hindi tayo rito matatapos. Kaya naman without further ado, let us discover what happened during the course of CEU Political Science Society's activities for the school year 2021-2022. May we invite the Vice President of Political Science Society, Mr. Shael Joshua P. Sanchez, to take the spotlight for the presentation of the activities for the current school year.
Good day, everyone. My name is Rael Joshua Sanchez, the Vice President of the Political Science Society here in Centro Escolar University. Today, I will bring you the Vice President's report. I'm going to show you the activities that we have done throughout the school year and where the Centro Escolar University's Political Science Society has been active. All in all, we have 8 major activities and monthly minor activities. First is the First General Assembly entitled Sulong, Philippine Democracy in the 21st Century. In this activity, we have talked about the current situation that we have had with regards to our democracy and the views the views of the youth with regards to our democracy. It was held last October 22, 2021. Second is a webinar entitled Asian Press Freedom, Media Censorship and Repression in Southeast Asia. It was conducted last December 11, 2021. This webinar talked about the media censorship in Southeast Asia, especially the problems we have had in Myanmar, and also the media censorship and security here in the country in the Philippines. The third activity that we have had is the 2022 Senatorial Forum. The Political Science Society have invited political senatorial candidates who are running at that time, and we have Dr. Carl Balita, Honorable Teddy Bagilat, Kabong Labog, and Honorable Sunny Trillanes as our guests. In this activity, we have asked them a lot of questions regarding political views and also the issues we have had in our country, and also a bit about international relations and their plan when they win as senators. Another is a webinar, which is what we are conducting today. It is entitled A Pivotal Change, the Transition of the Philippine Independent Foreign Policy. And we will move on to the Pulse Talk. The Pulse Talk is a political science program hosted by the Political Science Society here in Centro Escolar University. The first episode of the Pulse Talk, we have had Maria Lourdes Sereno, who is a former Chief Justice of the Philippines. The podcast was aired last October 30, 2021. Second is Ms. Samira Gutok. Ms. Samira Gutok is a senatorial aspirant at that time, and she was interviewed and was published last November 13, 2021. The third episode of the Pulse Talk, we have Honorable Francis Cheese Escudero, also a senatorial candidate, and the episode was aired last November 28, 2021. And lastly, we have our guest, Caliode de Guzman, who is a presidential aspirant at that time and was aired last December. For our minor activities, we have a monthly e-Kamustahan where the political science students of Centro Escolar Universities, with the help of our Political Science Society, would meet together and do updates with regards to our school year and also the activities that we have, and also the blocking system here in Centro Escolar University. All in all, the Political Science Society of Centro Escolar University has been active in giving out factual information and also introducing a lot of political figures we have here in our country. Moving forward, we will strive more to give out information to let the Centro Escolar University student body be more aware and well aware of the political ecosystem here in our country. Once again, my name is Raul Joshua Sanchez. That is the Vice President's report.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez, for informing us of the events of the Political Science Society. Grabe, sobrang daming na-presentang events na talagang madami kang matututunan.
Tama ka dyan, partner. So please keep in touch with us all throughout the school year and next school year para sabay-sabay at patuloy nating ma-experience ang kahusayan ng pagiging mag-aaral ng mga Pulsay. Let's get educated for the benefit of the Filipino people.
Now, for the presentation of the financial status of the organization for the school year 2021-2022, may we have Mr. Angelo Barba, the PRO of the Political Science Society.
In a span of almost a year, we spent 0 pesos, and yet we provided quality and fruitful event in the sphere of influence of Political Science Society. Thus, the Political Science Society, despite its limited budget for its interim year, can hone the political consciousness of its member to become pivotal in nation building. With its 0 pesos, we were able to anticipate events that are relevant and informative.
Thank you, Mr. Barba. Before we continue, gising check muna. Gising pa ba tayo, Escolarians? Kung oo, please i-type nyo naman if from what year na kayo.
And let's wait for the reactions and comments. Mag-comment po kayo. Para po may mabasa kami. Joke. What year po kayo? Ayan, gising pa daw, sabi ni Nesas. May ate niya, gising pa daw. Sino pa ba ang gising? Ayan, sabi ni Therese, ni Riva, ayan. So, ayan, partner, nakikilala na natin, nakikita na natin active pa sila. And please, if you have reactions and comments, just put it in the chat box. And now, to conclude our program, let us hear the innovative, outstanding, and hardworking president of the Political Science Society, Mr. Renz Aiden J. Fernandez, for the closing remarks.
To our very distinguished resource speaker, Prof. Enrico Gloria, of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, to the Dean of the School of Education, Liberal Arts, Music, Social Work, Dr. Maria Rita D. Lucas, the head of the Political Science Program and the interim advisor of the Political Science Society, Prof. Julius O. De Leon, to the faculty of different departments and programs in Centro Escolar University, and to our participants, a pleasant day to all of you. Last May 9, 2022, we witnessed a sui generis election because for the first time since the installation of the 1987 Constitution, the Filipino people elected a leader under majority. Majority of the people believe that this man may become the ideal chief executive, commander-in-chief, and chief architect of our independent foreign policy. The Filipino people vested its power and hope that this man can make our nation great again. On June 30, we will witness the new era. The new administration will face challenges with regards to our foreign policy, especially as we are currently in the midst of the pandemic and different regional turmoil. The installation of the 17th President of the Republic needs to keep his promises to the people in securing tenure, promotion of different sectors, and ensuring the quality of life of every citizen by means of pivotal partnership with other countries and regional organizations. Upholding the international law, especially in human rights and disputed waters in our territory, and saving our country in the abyss of economic loss. The next administration will be pivotal in ensuring the mixed economy format of our country. On the other hand, as the founding president of the Political Science Society, may I send my warmest and enthusiastic congratulations to our advisor, Prof. Julius De Leon, for his untiring support and dedication to put the CEU Political Science Society into reality. To my colleagues that answered the call to lead this organization with me, and mostly to all the committee members who spend their ample time in helping the organization to conduct numerous events. We cannot make it to this point without your creativity, enthusiasm, and dedication. Once again, thank you for answering the call of duty. And I wish for the next leaders of the organization to be more critical, political conscious, and mostly keep the fire burning within your heart to serve for the people. Continue to be the light during the darkest hours. Sabi nga ni outgoing President Leni Robredo, ang mga namulat, di na muling pipikit. Maraming salamat at mabuhay ang agham pampolitika.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for concluding this event. Thank you to everyone who attended this general meeting, and we hope that you learned a lot about the importance and acquired comprehensive knowledge about our country's international agendas and roles, especially in our political climate today as a change of the executive seat recently took place.
Now, for the evaluation form, please refer to the link given in the comment section and make sure to accomplish it within the day to claim your certificates. Indeed, it was a great honor to host the CEU Political Science Society's general meeting with the theme, A Pivotal Change Transition of the Philippine Independent Foreign Policy. Policy. This has been your host, Zarina Dichoson.
And I am Paula Andrea Milad, saying thank you and stay safe. Non sibi sed patriae.
At mabuhay ka naming mahal na pamantasan. Sentro Escolar.
Mabuhay ka, mahal naming pamantasan. Papuri sa dakilang sentro escolar. Ika'y dambana ng pag-ibig sa bayan. At hanggang nasa riyang matagumpay. Kapag ang diwa ng iyong mga hilig, lumagona sa puso't bibig. Sabay-sabay na ipasisigawan. Mabuhay ka, dakilang sentro escolar. Mabuhay ka, mahal naming pamantasan. Papuri sa dakilang sentro escolar. Ika'y dambana ng pag-ibig sa bayan.